Welcome back to the Realtor Rant, the podcast where we dive into the highs and lows of life as realtors. I'm Holly Barrett with
Alana O'Hanlon.
And today we're joined by Taley Hunt, a real estate superstar who's gone from no experience to over 75 million in sales in just 3 years. Taley's journey is packed with challenges and triumphs, from moving states to launching her career during a pandemic. She's built a booming business while balancing family and life's demands. So let's get ready for some real talk on social media strategy, client building, and thriving under pressure. Let's go. Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Have you on.
Thank you. Welcome, Taley.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to jump into get this ball rolling here. So can you just kind of give us the high level view of your journey thus far in real estate and how you've grown to be in the top 100 agents with over 100 million sales?
Yeah. So my story is that I work and live in the Columbia, South Carolina market. I moved into our market in 2020, sometime in 2020. I quit my 9-to-5, moved to the Columbia, South Carolina area with my husband. And of course, that was the middle of the pandemic and everything was just crazy. Because I quit my 9-to-5 and because of the pandemic, I did not have a local job in the Columbia area. There was a hiring freeze in my previous industry because of the pandemic. So I just kind of had to figure it out. Someone suggested real estate to me, and I decided to get my license. Around that same time, I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. And so this was back in 2020. So I had her in March the following year. She's 3.5 now. And I sold my first house in February of 2021. So I spent that previous fall and like winterish trying to just figure things out. And then I closed on my first deal in February 2021. I had my daughter in March, and I spent that entire year slinging real estate without having any childcare, trying to figure it out. I had no idea what I was doing, had no previous experience, didn't have any local sphere of influence. So I just kind of leaned into social media. And that year I sold 28 houses. Then in year 2, I sold 86. 2023, which was last year for me, I sold 145. And now I run a small team in the Columbia area that is growing. And I think we're at 145 units year to date so far in 2024 between me and my agent partner.
Is it just you and one other partner?
Yes, I have myself and an agent partner I wouldn't call her a buyer's agent because she can sell listings, but she typically does a lot of work with buyers. And then we, of course, have administrative, like transaction coordinator, assistant, stuff like that. But as far as who's producing, it's myself and her right now.
Okay. And then you kind of have the back office team with the assistant transaction coordinator.
Yeah. And I don't know when this will go live, but if over the next 30 days, I should be adding 1 or 2 more agents to my team, hopefully.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thanks.
So you and I have a very similar beginning. I too had a baby in March 3rd, 2021. And I too, that was my first year of real estate. And still to this date, my best year. Because I was running around like you with no childcare with the baby. How come you, fast forward to today, are where you are, but little old Holly here is averaging like 6 units a year? So tell me what I did wrong.
I don't know. That's a deep question. I have no idea. I mean, for me, it was a really innate drive. Like I just very much wanted to continue to grow and succeed. And so it became a top priority for me every day. After I sold 28 units in year 1, my goal was to sell 40 the next year. And obviously I did more than that. But I don't know. I spent the entire first year with my head down. When I sold 28 units that year, people in my office were very impressed, I guess because of the fact that I, had a baby and I didn't really know anybody. But then when I sold 86 units, they were extremely impressed, and everybody would tell me how impressive it was. But to me, I didn't know any different. So I didn't know what the industry standard was or how much agents typically sold. I wasn't going to conferences. I wasn't networking. I wasn't really doing anything except for trying to find business. And I think my head was just so down that I had no idea what accomplishment I had just actually gotten. And I think sometimes I look back and because this level of production is normal to me, I still sometimes don't realize like, oh, there's not a lot of agents who are not selling this amount of property. And I get a little like bamboozled sometimes. So I don't know. I think for me, it was just like all I did was work, you know? I mean, obviously I was a mom and I still am, and I'm a wife. And so there's that time, but I didn't do anything else but work. I just worked all the time. It's a lot.
Did you feel like you now looking back could have set better boundaries for yourself and have been that successful? Or do you think it was the lack of boundaries and the grit and determination that you had that really gave you that drive to catapult to those 86 transactions in year 2?
I think I could have set boundaries for myself and still been very successful. But I think that for me, I could have set boundaries with clients and had better success and still had good success. I could have set boundaries with my time and still had good success. But what I think it was for me was that every opportunity to get a deal, I ran at it. I didn't say no to anyone. It didn't matter. Whatever they needed, I was there to help. I still think I could have closed the deals. Do I think that I would have maybe performed at such a high level? Maybe not. I definitely think I could have still found a lot of success. I just think it would have looked a lot differently. And I think that the lack of boundaries in my business, which was absolutely present, was out of this new agent fear that if you're not responding to people immediately, you're not doing a good enough job. And every single deal, you know, like anytime someone sent me a referral or I saw someone who, you know, I was very follow up. And I think that the constant follow up led to a high conversion, which we still have a pretty high conversion. I just am more lax about it.
How did you organize that? Did you have a CRM system? Was it notes in your phone? How did you organize making sure that follow up stayed on task?
Yeah, so I have a CRM. I'm with Keller Williams, and I use the KW Command CRM. But I also just spent years using good old-fashioned Google Sheet and putting every lead in there and looking at it a few times a week and saying, you know, have I talked to this person, making sure I haven't forgotten about people. And then it became a lot, you know, like it's hard to keep up with as many leads as we get. And so it's just a constant repetitiveness of writing down the people that you are meeting and making sure that you are checking that list often to make sure you're not forgetting about people. It's all trial and error, though.
Yeah. And do you time block that time out?
Yes, I like to lead generate in the morning and do appointments in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So the units that you sold, were they a mixed bag, or were they heavy on a particular type of asset? What kind of assets were they?
So all single family residential sales, not doing any sort of commercial. Nothing where I was working with investors that were buying multiple. I wasn't doing any of that. So 145 units for me is 145 different people.
145 doors.
Yeah. It's not a bunch of repetitiveness. It's not like one duplex that counts as multiple. It was truly that many people. And it was very buyer heavy, like 75% buyers.
And was there one, or like, what were your top 3 prospecting strategies?
Social media has always been one for me, you know, like interacting with people, engaging with people online, posting content. Agent referrals is a huge lead lever for me as well. And then my database, my sphere of influence. So I didn't have a sphere of influence at first, but over time, being in the area, meeting people, talking to as many people as I was at such a high level because I was doing so much real estate, you grow a sphere innately. And so I get a lot of business from those people too.
Were you making your own, and do you make today your own social media, or do you like pay someone to edit? Do you use like Coffee and Contracts or anything, any of these tools?
Yeah. So when I first started out, I used Coffee and Contracts, and actually I'm just join the membership again because I am growing my team and we're going to have a marketing presence. And it's just so much easier to have that kind of content readily available to you, not to lean on it as a crutch or not so that you're not creating your own organic content, but just so that you have those added resources to be able to use to market your brand. I think Coffee and Contracts is great. I didn't use it for years. I mean, probably for like 3 years. But as I'm moving into more of a leadership role in my world and in my team's world and less focused on doing deals myself all the time, I have more of an ability to focus on leading them and growing that side of my business. And having that resource has been super helpful. But otherwise, it's just been me. It's been me creating everything organically. And it's hard, but it's just like any other lead generation. Like if you're going to door knock or cold call or whatever, it's hard. So is social media.
Yeah. Let's talk about your coaching business. It's primarily geared towards moms. I don't think it necessarily is only a fit for moms in real estate, but correct me if I'm wrong. But it seems like a lot of the themes are, mom guilt, burnout, how to balance it all, how to not literally end up in an insane asylum.
Right.
So talk to us a little bit more about your coaching.
Yeah, I love coaching moms in real estate. I specifically like to talk to and work with moms in real estate because I feel that I have the opportunity to be what I needed 4 years ago. And I feel very passionate about that. I love working with moms and helping change their lives. I do work with people who are not moms. I mean, I work with men. I work with single women. I work with dog moms. I work with people who are not human moms. But for the most part, I would say that my coaching programs are filled with other moms in real estate. And I believe that's largely because I have a passion for building confidence in other moms. I really struggled with that as the first, second, third year agent. And sometimes I still do. And so I think it's really important to provide that community and that support and the inspiration too of like, hey, like if I can do this, you absolutely can. So I really like working with moms. And that is why a lot of my content is geared towards them. That's why I have a specific coaching program just for moms, because it's really a passion project for me.
And you have a monthly, very reasonably priced coaching, it's probably like a group coaching type situation that's very affordable. Whereas, one-on-one coaching is, I can't afford it. And I think most agents probably can't either. So tell us who would be a good fit for that type of program that you offer.
Yeah, so I offer group coaching, which is weekly coaching every Thursday morning. And we have lots of women who are in there. Some are moms and some are not. But for the most part, I would say the vast majority are moms. In that program, like I said, we meet every single week for 30 minutes. And sometimes it's me teaching. Sometimes it's an industry guest speaker who's teaching. But always, every single month, there is a Q&A session where you can get on the call, ask the questions, talk to me so it feels like a little bit more one-on-one and allow yourself to pique my brain. And I really love it. It is affordable. It's $97 a month. And I know there's people out there who cannot afford that. But I wanted it to be as affordable as I could make it and still make it make sense. I would say the type of person that is a good fit for that is kind of a little bit all over the place, because I have agents in there who are 10-year real estate agent veterans who run big teams. And I have agents in there who are fresh off of the licensing exam. The cool thing about it is that it's more of a community than it is anything else. So you do get that weekly coaching, you get that continuous education. It's affordable enough to be able to do on its own or to add on top of any other type of coaching program that you're in or any other type of course that you're taking. And it's different. So there's no one focus. We don't focus on just social media. We don't focus on just lead generation. We don't focus on just sales. We focus on everything. The topics vary every single week with the goal of just helping you learn how to have the confidence by us providing the tools that you need to be able to go out and find more business and grow your business and learn how to balance that with motherhood as well. So the community aspect of it is a private group that only members can have access to. So you get that added support that I'm also a part of as well. You get people who are surrounding you who are on the same wavelength as you. You know, they're also moms for the most part. They have the same goals that you do. They have a lot of the same struggles that you do. So you get that community, which is also a really good opportunity for referrals. So people will get in the group and say, hey, I have a listing lead in this city and state. Does anybody work here? So there's really not a one fit. I mean, I have people who will join my mom's group and then they'll go into something that's a little bit more elevated and they'll stay in the mom's group, or they'll join the elevated program and then go to the mom's group as well. I mean, I think it's a great fit for anybody who's seeking that educational content and that community aspect, who needs that.
And with that membership, is there a portal with other tools and supplies inside the portal? Is there a recording and a playback if they can't make the weekly call?
Yeah, so every call is recorded and it's all put into the vault, is what I call it. You get this vault of material. There's probably over 45 videos now, because we started in October of 2023. They're always recorded. So when you join the program, for $97, you get access to almost a year's worth of material. And that's videos and material that may be attached to those videos as well. So it's a lot. I mean, it's a really great bang for your buck when you think about it, because you're getting 2 hours of coaching and teaching every single week, plus access to all the previous content too.
How many members are part of the community now?
Over 200.
Wow.
Yeah, it's grown a lot. I think when I initially launched it, we had over 100 people join. And I did not focus on growing it in terms of like how many people are in the program until probably August of this year. I had just been like maintaining it. And then when I really sat down and said, how can we get more people in this program to benefit everybody else? The more people that we have in here, the better. We have gained over 80 women in the last 2 months. It's been insane.
Wow. That is incredible.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's really a great environment and an ecosystem for people who want to have success in real estate.
And that just goes when you lead with passion, like you called it a passion project. When you lead with that passion and you lead with that contribution, it just pours out of you, and then people want to join because it's just authentic and it's real and it's genuine. That's just so amazing.
Yeah, my word is impact. I just want to have a positive impact. So when I get moms, like I had a mom reach out to me the other day and say that she quit her 9-to-5, her well-paying 9-to-5, because she had taken some courses and coaching with me. She felt confident enough to really go all in her real estate business. And she said, first, I have to thank God, and then I have to thank you. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm going to start crying. And when I hear things like that, I had someone else reach out to me recently and say, I just wanted to let you know that I've officially made more money this year than I ever have in my entire life. It's just the coolest thing to know that like I play a part in things like that. And so that's my goal, is just to be the person that I really needed 4 years ago and to help people in any way that I can. It's awesome.
That is so amazing. Congratulations on that success.
I'm not really big on a gaggle of women, or, a group of women, right? I think of a gaggle of geese, but I'm not one to just like be excited about joining a big group of women. But I will say, that said, this one sounds interesting to me because, it is a unique situation with having young children, balancing, real estate, which is very entrepreneurial. I mean, many of us also have other lines of revenue streams that we're also juggling. So just so many moving parts. And then some of us, not Alana, because she's the best housewife ever, but some of us also suck at the housewife part too. So it's a lot of different things that, and nobody else could really relate to that other than like other moms in real estate. So
best housewife comes with other sacrifices, Holly.
that I'm not willing to do.
It's pretty cool. I mean, I will get people in there who say, I don't know where else to ask this. I need advice. And I know that people in this group are going to understand. And it's a mixture of, I feel like I don't have enough time for my family and my business. And how am I going to be able to balance the two? And then it's also very, strategic stuff too, where people are like, I need to close this many deals. What advice do you have? Or I have a listing that's sitting on the market and I can't get it to move. What should I do? So, and then I have like people who are more established, and they're like, I run a team of 10 agents and I'm trying to figure out how to do X, Y, and Z. So you've got people in there who can contribute to that conversation, as well as myself. I get in that Facebook group every day. When I see people who are asking for advice and I can help them, it's nothing for me to chime in. So it's just such a good space to be able to get education from me, a little bit of a touch and access from me, and then, that weekly dose of content from other agents too, who are just absolutely crushing it in the industry.
I've got a question for you just in this mom work-life balance. So, one of my big challenges is I do between 8 to 12 million a year. And with my commitment to like my family, my kids, their sports, all of the different things, I would like to get into maybe that 15, 20 million mark. But sometimes I almost have a fear to prospect and lead generate, in the fear that I'm going to have to get an appointment that's when I need to be taking my child to a sporting event, or, miss a game or a practice. I'm heavily responsible for those duties in my household. So how do you kind of navigate that? Or what would your advice be for me on something like that?
Yeah, so my advice would be that you can set boundaries if you want to, right? So I have a friend actually who sent me an email yesterday, said these are her rules. She sends out rules to her clients once she starts working with them. And one line said, my hours of operation are this time to this time. And it says, I'm of course absolutely available after that by appointment. And then she said, we will absolutely show you houses after that time if you want to, by appointment. She also said, we need 24 hours in advance to show you properties. And she explained in the email that if you're already out looking at 17 houses, it's really hard to add additional houses in the same time, because a lot of times sellers will need notice or whatever the case may be. So she was just very clear and upfront. And I asked her, I say, so when people contact you after that time, what do you do? She says, if I'm negotiating a deal, I'm on top of it. She said, if it's very urgent, I will absolutely answer them. I may not do it like right then, but I will 100% get to them. And if it's not urgent at all, I just respond in the morning. But what it does is it sets the tone. So when they do contact me, they're like, hey, I know that this is your time with your family. Feel free to get back to me in the morning. And then it sets the relationship of like, don't expect me to respond to you in 2 minutes every single time you message me. I think we just have to be realistic with our boundaries, right? Like, and I'm not saying a real estate agent is the same as a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, but are you really calling them at 8 o'clock at night? Like, are you expecting them to go to your house to do a listing appointment at 7 p.m.? Not necessarily, And so I think it's okay to be realistic and say, hey, these are my available times. Choose between them.
Now, you kind of give a couple options, say like Wednesday at 3:30 or Friday at 2:30 or whatever the case may be. And if they say, hey, I don't get off work till 5, then you say, hey, maybe a Saturday or Sunday appointment would be better.
Sometimes, but I'm okay with working after 5. So for me, my goal is to only work after 4 a certain amount of days. So as long as I like hit that, I'm okay.
And like how many days a week is that?
For me, and this is a recent thing, I don't want to work after 4 any more than 3 days a week. Okay. Wednesdays are like off limits unless there's a special reason why, because that's my daughter's dance class days. Sundays, I'm not working past 4, period. Usually Saturdays either. And a lot of times I hit my goal and then some. What I will also do is like today, I will be at my office until 6. So I'm going to work here. And then I'm not going to do that again for the rest of the week because I'm going to have some boundaries in my life. And this is all new. Like, I'm not someone who has always followed this rule, but I think if someone is feeling like you may be feeling like I want to do more, but I'm scared of how it will impact my life, you just have to be very clear about your boundaries. And then you have the autonomy to say, this person doesn't really fit within my bounds, so I'm just not going to work with them. And that's okay to do as well. But I do think that if anybody's going to double their business, there is the added workload, and it just is what it is unless you leverage or unless you raise your price point so that you're doubling your volume without having to necessarily double the units that you're doing, which is possible too.
Right. Great advice. Thank you.
Really good stuff. Tell us about the boot camp that's about to start. And is that just for members or is that for anyone? I'd like to hear about that.
So that's just for members. So in MOMward, every week we meet on Thursday mornings. And usually the topics vary. Starting on October 3rd, we are doing a 6-week boot camp. And so those 6 weeks, the topics all align with each other instead of being a little bit more sporadic. So they follow a plan, a lesson plan that I've created essentially, where we are focusing on how to use this time to gear up for 2025. In my opinion, if you want to crush it next year, you have to start in quarter 4. Like I just had a meeting with my team today, and we were already planning for 2025. And we will do that again 2 more times before the end of the year, which we always do. Because if we want to do well next year, we need to go into the year with deals under contract that are ready to close. And so we already have all that on the horizon. And that's the same goal as this 6-week boot camp is how can we mentally prepare and actually prepare for next year. So the focus is all about mapping out what your vision is and how you're going to get there, creating marketing plans, creating lead generation plans. How are you actually going to accomplish the goals that you have? And what are those goals? And so that's going to be how it works. But yes, in order to do the boot camp, you have to be a member of MOMward. And if you are already a member of MOMward, then you obviously already get access to the boot camp. It happens on the same day as the MOMward sessions would normally happen. And so you can join MOMward and just stay for long enough to get the 6 weeks. And then you could always cancel. You probably won't want to because it's awesome. You could join and you could stay forever, whatever.
And my last question about your group, is it very broker agnostic or is it heavy on the KW side or is it a mixed bag?
It is 100% broker agnostic. I don't even talk. The only time I ever speak about KW in there is if somebody asks me, what CRM do you use? Or why are you aligned with the broker that you're with? But I don't bring it up because I don't want people to feel like this is a way for me to recruit you. Because I don't care about stuff like that. It doesn't matter to me what brokerage you're with. You could be with a small brokerage. You could be with a big brokerage. It doesn't matter. So I don't even bring it up because I really don't want people to feel the pressure of, if I coach with her, I'm going to have to go to whatever brokerage she's with. I don't like that.
Yeah, that's so cool. We just started with my group of mentees that I have. I just launched for them to kick their 2025 off with the bang. CMA a day challenge for the month of October. Do you do anything like that?
No, I don't, but I've heard of that and I think it's awesome. I mean, I've never done anything like that, but I think it would be such a great tool if you're really trying to go for listings. I think it would be awesome.
Yeah. So we're excited. I just actually sent out my first email to them right before our call. So this is my first go around. I just started being a coach and mentor myself. So, it's a new exciting journey, but this is our first challenge that we're doing. So I'm excited to kind of launch that. And I was curious if you had ever done anything like that.
No, I haven't, but I've heard a lot of people say that they have. I actually cannot stand doing CMAs. It's like the bane of my existence. Just because I hate math and looking at too many things at one time. It stresses me out. So even when I do get listings, I hate I just dread doing them, which I think is kind of silly being that it's my job, but it's just not my thing. So I'm listening to you say this and I'm like, that would probably be a good thing for us to do if we really wanted to try and get as many listings as possible before the end of the year. So, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share some tools with you. And, for us here with the, NAR settlement changes and everything that's kind of been happening in the industry, buyers naturally come from getting listings. So I'm kind of coaching my mentees that listings, you list to last. So go out there and then, the buyers kind of naturally come from the listings in a sense, if you would. So
it's really true. My first year in the industry, I did 1 listing and the rest were buyers. And then the next year I did 24 listings. Last year I did 40. And I think we're somewhere around 50 this year so far, like signed and what we've put on the market. And it has definitely brought us more leads than we had before, just because signs in the yard, open houses, I mean, things like that.
Yeah. And, we're starting to see more and more buyers are just going directly to the listing agent instead of having to deal with getting the buyer broker agreement signs. And I'm hoping that that will kind of weed itself out. I think the intrepidation with buyers is maybe they're not talking to an agent that is experienced or knows how to exactly explain the importance of having buyer representation and explaining the buyer broker relationship. And I think when people get a little bit more educated on that, it will help buyers become a little bit more confident in signing buyer broker agreements, because there really is an importance to having a listing agent and a buyer agent. I really do think there's important roles for both parties to have their own representation.
I would 100% agree. I do not like being a dual agent. I very rarely do it on my listings. And I tell my sellers when I sit down with them, I don't want to do this. Like, I would really prefer to not represent the buyer or have an unrepresented buyer. I set the expectation that it's like my last option. So I hate doing it. I feel it's too messy.
And then, so what is your process? Will you refer to an agent in your office if a buyer does come to you directly?
Yeah, typically. This year, I think I've done one dual agent. And that was only because the buyer was the tenant of the property. And I'd already met with them to go over the process of listing the house because they were living in the property. So I had a decent relationship with them. And they told my seller, we think we want to buy your house. And so it also worked better for my seller because we were able to negotiate better terms for them and save them money because I was a dual agent. So it was just one of those where I got the vibe that these people are already living in this property. They're not going to be asking for repairs. It's not going to be messy. I know it will appraise. And I just thought, okay, we can do this. But otherwise, no, I'm not doing it. And I typically will refer it out to somebody on my team or somebody in my office.
Only thing is, I think that we're going to start seeing is that you may have a lot of buyers that say, well, no, then I'll just go unrepresented. And I think that would be messier than you actually representing them.
I think so too. I think it could possibly be messier too. But also, in my opinion, like if I'm representing both parties, I feel that I'm very much just a paper pusher. Like I cannot really advise you, and I really can't advise you. And so at least if I can like just have one person's back, at least I can confidently say I'm doing everything I can to be good for you. And then the fault is not on me. And that's the problem, is that I do such a high level of business. By the end of this year, I'll have sold 400 houses in 4 years. We live in such a litigious society that I piss one person off too much, they want to sue me. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I obviously have paperwork and insurance, but like people are crazy. And so I just try to and I explain that to buyers as well. Like, listen, you're coming to me and I work for the seller. Don't you want someone to work for you? Especially if it doesn't cost you anything, typically, and I have to tread lightly with that too. But like if my seller is already agreeing to pay a buyer agent compensation, like, why would you not want to, so that and then my sellers feel comfortable with that too. Like, I think a lot of times they would rather pay than know that they really don't have anybody in their court.
Personally, my personal opinion, I think we'll see less and less co-op. And I do think, I hear what you guys are saying, and I don't disagree with you, but I do think there is a way, if you set the right boundaries and rules, to do it in a way that you are giving full representation to the listing. Let's say you're on the list side. You give the full representation to your sellers, whilst giving simply a transactional paperwork flat fee. I like flat fee to the buyers. If they are really, if they are like, well, I'm just going to do my own paperwork, I'd much rather, let me take care of that. Let's come up with something that I can, you know what I mean?
Well, I recently had a deal where the buyers were representing themselves and I still sent them the contract. I'm not representing you. So the box on there is customer instead of client. That's how our contracts are written. And then they sign a brokerage agreement thing that says that they're not my client. So I filled out the paperwork for all parties to make sure that the paperwork was correct. But it's on them to read the paperwork. It's on them to decide that they understand the paperwork. Like I'm not doing anything for them except for filling it out and sending it to you. And then it's up to you,
Almost like a hold harmless.
Yeah, we send them a document that states that they don't have any representation, and there's nobody that's responsible for them except for them. But the only reason why, I send the contract because they don't have access to the contract. It's just easier for me to send it, fill it out in DocuSign and make sure that they have it. But I'm not, doing anything else for them.
And you're still looking out for your seller's best interest at the end of the day. By doing that.
It would be totally different if I was representing the buyer. Then I would have to explain everything. I would have to make sure that they understand. I don't have to do any of that when you're not represented. I just send it to you and then it's on you.
Now, what you just described is kind of what I'm thinking I don't mind doing. And that's still dual agency. It's just, correct?
I think it's just not in my state. I think it's different by state. So in my state, it is not. So when it's dual agency, we would have to get a form signed that says there's dual agency. That's because this person is my client and this person is my client. But when this person is just a customer and I don't have any fiduciary duty to them, I only have agency agreement with one side. But I think that's one of those things that is dependent on contract and specification of state.
Yeah, because we, in Florida, dual agency is actually no go. We're called transaction brokers the state of Florida, but dual agency is, technically, illegal. So
but can you do what Taley just described?
Yes, but it's called a transaction broker. So you have no fiduciary responsibility to either party. Like Taley said, it's basically you're working for the transaction. You're a paper pusher almost. Like you can't give any sort of advice or, direction. You are just
managing the whole thing.
Managing. Yes. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
And I think you should get paid for that though.
And you work that out with the seller typically.
I would get paid by the buyer personally. I would say, this is my fee for doing these services for you.
Yeah. Maybe you could, I don't know. I think I guess it would depend on your paper. I think it is very paperwork dependent. Like here, when I have a seller contract, like a listing agreement, I right in there. If you accept an offer from a unrepresented buyer or someone who we are doing dual agency with, this is the total commission. So the total commission will change from whatever it is to whatever we agree that it's going to be, because my workload gets heavier.
I do the same thing.
Okay. Yeah, that is a good idea.
And Holly, you got to think about it too. Does that buyer have any money to compensate you for services?
This is something that I work out with sellers before we even go on the market.
Right.
So it's not even a question. Once we get the offer, we don't even have to think about it because we have already agreed to this 30 days ago.
Have you had any trouble with sellers now not wanting to compensate buyer brokers? Neither.
I have zero trouble with it. And I think that it may be because of the way I explain it to them. We are not in a seller's market. In my market, it's not a seller's market. So you had better pay a buyer's agent or the buyers are not going to buy your house. And that truly is how it is here. If I have a buyer that I'm representing and they have to compensate me a decent amount, like if the seller is not offering anything, if they're making up 0.5% or something like that, fine. But if they have to come out of pocket with my entire percentage that I charge, they are not going to buy that house. Especially because there is a 50% or more inventory in our market right now than there was last year. So why would they, when they have all of the other options, especially when we are so inundated with new construction here? There's so many more properties on the market than there used to be. A lot of those are new construction that are offering buyer agent compensation as well as bonuses. So they can ease and on top of that, buyer concessions, seller concessions for the buyers. So they could easily go buy another house, get a better deal, and not have
new construction.
And so I tell my sellers, if you want your house to sell, do not play around with the buyer agent compensation. At least tell me that you're willing to offer it. We don't necessarily have to set an amount today, but tell me that you're willing to offer it. And we can convey that to the public, that they are paying this. Also feel like in my market, the best thing you can do is set an an amount, and I don't want to get too much into it because, but I don't see a lot of agents on my listings asking for more than what I tell them is being offered. So if I tell them, hey, the seller's offering X% or X amount, they typically write that in a compensation agreement if my sellers have already decided an amount. So to me, it kind of saves the sellers a little bit of money because now you don't have somebody coming in and asking for more than what's already been decided. It is a negotiable piece of the contract, but we don't have to talk about it because it's already been decided. I mean, if you tell me that the seller's offering X amount, but my buyer agency agreement is for more than that, then I'm asking you for what my buyer agency agreement's for, whether or not the seller's offering it. I'm just asking. So a lot of times they'll give it to you anyway.
I really think that there's a greater opportunity for listing agents and buyers agents that have their tools sharpened, that are experts in their industries. I actually think there's more opportunity for all of us to make more money when you kind of have that right mindset. Now buyers agents aren't relying on the listing agent to negotiate on their behalf for their area of expertise. They're actually getting on the field and saying, hey, this is my worth. The buyer's willing to pay it. We'll do what we can to negotiate it. But at the end of the day, this is what you're compensating me for. So I think there's more money and more opportunity to be made and more transparency, I guess.
I think that our average compensation amount will go up next year because of the NAR change. I 100% believe that, because I also work with a lot of VA loan users, and previously they were not allowed to compensate us. So we took whatever we could. Well, with the new forms that we have to sign, the way they are set up, it is not in my best interest as a practitioner at all to say, so in our forms, there's three options. The buyer pays you, the seller pays you, and the buyer's not allowed to, or that the buyer pays whatever the seller doesn't pay. I do not feel that it is in my best interest to check the box that says the seller pays me and the buyer is not allowed to, because in my opinion, I still have a fiduciary duty to that buyer, whether or not the seller's paying me. So then I'm committed to working for free, which I'm not going to do. And so now I can clearly explain that, and I can say, hey, these new changes have changed our forms. And at some point I won't have to say that, but I can say, these new changes in the industry require us to do X, Y, and Z. And so this is the box we are going to check. And we will do everything we can do to get that out of the seller. But if the seller's not going to pay it to us, then you're responsible for the difference. And we have a greater opportunity to advocate for ourselves than we used to, especially working with that population of people, because there have been several deals that I've closed where what I've been paid is very small because I could not ask the buyer to pay it. I wasn't allowed to.
You guys make some good points. I do want to play devil's advocate a little, because I think the average compensation per agent could increase purely because I hope, will have a mass exodus of agents. And so there'll be more business to go around. But I actually do think that with AI technology and just this changing dynamic of compensation, and also the perception of the public, I do think that per transaction, as a percentage of the transaction amount, commissions will go down.
I think they will if a buyer's agent doesn't know how to negotiate for themselves. But I think the agents who know how to will, because we know how to, and we have. I have been able to negotiate a higher compensation for myself in the last 2 months than I have for the last 4 years. And I think the agents who know how to say, this is my worth and this is what I'm going to get paid, and also who have enough business to be able to turn away people who don't want to pay them that, will thrive. Because if somebody doesn't want to pay me, then I'm not working with them. And I think that that is a product of being so inundated with business, So I think that, say we get a lot of agents who leave the market because of this, there hypothetically could be less agents for buyers to work with. So hypothetically, they could have more business. And then those people who have more business have less time to deal with people who don't value them. But I also have never had any problem negotiating my compensation on the listing side either. And I think that I probably charge a little bit more than other people in my market. And that's just, the hunch that I have. And I think the people who know how to look at buyers and accurately explain their value, so much so that they are willing to sign a buyer agency agreement right then and not think about it, will thrive. I definitely think there will be agents out there 100% that make less per commission check because they don't know how to do it. But also, I was in trainings on this for 9 months before it ever happened, because I was able to go to the top 100 masterminds with Keller Williams, and they drilled it in our heads before the lawsuit ever came out. And this is not, I'm not saying that like they knew what the verdict was going to be. I don't know. But I think that they were aware that industry changes were going to happen. And they drilled it into our heads that you have to get good at your buyer consultation. You have to get good at showing your value. And so we spent a lot of time really practicing how do we convey what we do and how we protect buyers. And so because we're good at that, I think it's just easier for us. But I don't think that's a universal experience. I don't think.
I'm in Georgia.
I agree with that.
We've always used buyers brokerage agreements. So this wasn't a big change for us.
Us too. We've always used them too.
Okay.
We just haven't been able to enforce them as much as we can now.
Oh, we had to. Like it was by law here.
So no. We had to use them as well. It was by law here as well. But what I mean is that when you work with veterans and they're using their VA loans, per loan standards, they cannot pay you.
I got you.
So we couldn't enforce that part of it. I'm pretty sure that other people that we worked with, we could have enforced it. We just never did. But now, being that we can't show without a buyer agency agreement, the conversation is had much earlier on than it previously was. Because previously it was like, whatever, we're just going to take whatever the listing agent gives us. It is what it is.
Right.
But now it's an upfront conversation. So we just hash it out in the beginning.
Well, I do hope you both are right and that I'm wrong. I still think a lot of realtors are underestimating and undervaluing the perception of the public and how it's going to change over the next decade. I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow, but AI and the perception of the public, I don't think we're going to see the $30,000 commission checks on $1 million property. That's just my opinion. But we can agree to disagree on that one.
I think it depends on the price point too. I mean, I totally think it depends on the price point. I think $30,000 commission is a lot of money. I mean, it just is. And I'm not saying that it's not, that people are not worth it, but I also think it depends on a lot of different nuances. Like my average price point is $300,000. It's much different than if I was out here selling multi-million-dollar properties. So I think that it will depend on your market, where you are, what the consumers believe in your market, how people can accurately convey and because there's not one set percentage or amount or whatever that looks like, I think it just depends. I think it will vary by area for sure.
And there's a lot of realtors, real quick, there's a lot of realtors who believe that they're worth millions of dollars per transaction when they're probably worth like maybe 10 grand. But what they're really worth at the end of the day, it's like, yes, we should have a high perception of our self-worth. Okay, I get that. But let's also have a dose of reality that you're worth what the market will bear. Like that's what you're worth. You bring the value, it's a sliding scale, but at the end of the day, if there's no client willing to pay it, then you ain't worth that, buddy, not on the market.
I mean, I think what you're saying is it's just like a house, it's worth what people will pay for it. But I think that's why real estate agents have to get good at explaining what they do, and how I think there's a lot of mediocre real estate agents that don't do enough business and they don't have enough experience and they don't know how to convey and they don't keep up with the educational standards that we have because they don't have to, because they barely sell any real estate, And so I think that once you get into the thick of it and you realize, my God, I'm dealing with all these people, I'm dealing with all their attitudes, I'm dealing with and it's also a lot of liability. Like even if we have E&O, even if we have documents that people are signing, you're dealing with people's largest investments. And so it's a lot. And in my opinion, the way I look at it is that and I think it depends on where you're getting your business. My leads are always warm, typically, and I get on average 5 warm leads a week. So if somebody doesn't want to pay me, then I'm not working with them. And I think that there will be some agents that are able to set that standard for themselves when other agents are not, because there will always be the agents who are commission check to commission check. They are barely making it. They're barely figuring it out. They don't have multiple streams of income, so they struggle. So they will absolutely take a buyer or a seller for a quote unquote reduced rate than they previously would have, or what they really want. There's no standard. So whatever they really want, they're willing to bend on that because of the fact that they need it. And that's okay. That is what it is. So I think there will definitely be agents who falter or go low or whatever. There's always been, flat fee agencies or whatever. But I do think that there's a unique opportunity for agents who really know what they're doing and know their value and are good at communicating it. I think those agents specifically have a good opportunity at making more money. I 100% believe that we will make more money next year than we will this year because of that.
That was the class of agent that I was kind of referring to as well. You have to be able to articulate your value and what you do from point A to point Z. And then they will compensate you for it. But unless you can get really, really sharp at articulating that, there will be the agents that do reduce commissions, flat fees, or whatever. And I'm not saying, I have first-time home buyers that don't have any money to pay me, and we're asking for, closing costs or fees. Would I not work with those people because of where they are financially? Absolutely not. We'll work it out and we'll figure it out. I'm not going to turn down business for people that maybe can't afford to pay me because I'm just so relationship based. We'll figure it out, and then you do a modification of your buyer broker agreement at that time. But again, you have those conversations up front during the buyer consultation.
I agree. And to clarify, the people that I'm not working with that aren't willing to pay me are the people who are saying, I'm not paying you, period. I will not sign anything that says I have to pay you. And the only you will ever get paid is through the seller. If you are not willing to at least communicate about it, then we can't work together. And I also recently had a buyer who, and I can't get into the details, but for one reason or another, their buyer agency agreement said X number. What the seller was offering was X number, and they were not allowed to pay me the difference. And it's a whole long drawn out story, but they weren't. They were so determined to pay me. They wanted to write me a check, and this is multiple thousands of dollars. They wanted to write me a check after closing, and I'm not going to go any further into that. But my point is that they were so willing to uphold the buyer agency agreement because they had signed it, they agreed with it, they felt that we did our job, we conveyed our value actionably as well, that they were like, we will write you a check right now. We will pay the difference right now. And I think when you are relationship based, when you go above and beyond for your people, when you're getting leads who are coming from other people that you've treated very well, they are more willing and they're happy to because they just want someone to work in their best interest. I think that's not always the case. You're always going to get leads who don't want to pay you. And that's what I mean, is I don't want to work with people who say to me, I'm not signing anything that makes me responsible. People who say I won't even sign it because I don't want to be responsible, I'm not working with you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And for us in Florida, we didn't have to have buyer broker agreement signed. So this was a whole new thing for me. And so I did a lot of training. I did all the seminars. I did everything I could to sharpen my skills because that was, a skill set that I needed to sharpen because I'm so old school. I was handshake agreement. I never really had any problems with it. It was what it was. And then in that same token, I accepted the fee that the listing agent negotiated on my behalf. So since this whole thing, I'm getting my buyer broker agreement signed. I'm setting my commission. I haven't had any problems with, except for one person. And I was like, that's okay. We don't have to work together. We can part as friends. I'm here if you need me, if you're willing to compensate me. And, they ended up going and working directly with the listing agent, which is fine. I will still keep in contact with them, but I feel empowered now having this responsibility in this new, set of rules and standards that now I've implemented it in my business and I can hold myself to. And, I've actually been able to earn more commission from that. But I took a lot of training on the upfront to prepare for it because real estate's my thing. I'm not Like there's no other career for me, so.
And a lot of agents did not do that. I mean, a lot of agents did not do that. And it's been a learning curve for all of us, we've all had to learn and adjust in some way. But I know that there's a lot of agents who didn't take the time and didn't understand. And so I think the agents who are doing everything they can, it will be positive, but I think we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. So getting to the bottom, do you have coaches? What kind of podcasts do you listen to? What kind of books do you read?
My husband's here and he made a face like books. I don't read. I'm terrible. It's something that I need to get better at. It's on the bottom of my totem pole. I don't listen to podcasts that are educational. I think it's because I'm always working. I just want some sort of escape. So I listen to things that are fun, like pop culture stuff.
What are some of those? I'm always diving into educational stuff. I need more fun stuff to listen to.
My favorite podcast is The Toast. It's like a girly little podcast. They get on there every day and they talk about pop culture and what's happening in the news, and it's just funny. But I do have coaches. I've always had coaches after, I think, year one. So I work with KW Maps. I do coach through KW's brokerage, and I coach with Jordan Freed with KW Maps, and it has been absolutely life-changing. I've been with him since the beginning of this year, I think, maybe end of last year, beginning of this year. Previously, I was also with another coach within KW. So I've always coached within that realm. But that's who I work with. I work with him. Me and my husband both coach under him. And I think there's 4 meetings a month or something like that where we work together. It's awesome. Very empowering.
And has that helped? Sorry, Holly. Has that helped transition you from top producer role into a coaching and leadership role?
I wouldn't say a coaching role, no. But I would say a leadership role within my team, yes. So when I started working with Jordan Freed, I had this micro team thing going on. So I had administrative help, but I was still selling every single house myself. And this year I've sold myself over 100 units. But I never really want to do that again. I really want to go into the CEO type of role where I am agents on my team to build businesses and not necessarily personally selling every single house, so that I can focus on being a better leader for them. And that transition has happened while working with him. He has been very helpful at helping me figure out how to build a world that allows me to be in alignment with what I need and what my team needs. And my husband is a licensed real estate agent, but he serves as our director of operations. So he doesn't sell real estate. He's licensed though, obviously in case we need help in any way. And he does just a lot of back end work to help support the foundation of the business. And he coaches within Jordan Freed's network. They have an operations person who coaches my husband.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. What advice would you give to women that are either just starting out in the industry or maybe struggling in the industry? What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I think that you have to have one of two things. I think you either have to have confidence that you can succeed, and that has to be coupled with a drive, right? The consistency, or you have to have the grit and the hustle to work towards whatever you want, regardless of whether you have the confidence or not. When I first started, I did not have the confidence, but I had the grit. I really, really wanted it. So in spite of it being messy and me not having that confidence, I just ran headfast at my goals. And then over time, I built up my confidence through, mindset work and surrounding myself with really solid people and having supportive people in my world. And then obviously from just doing the work, seeing the results, it builds a natural confidence. But if you don't have the confidence, you just have to run at it anyway. Don't let your limited mindset and limited beliefs stop you. But if you already have the confidence, that's not enough. You also have to work very hard, and you have to be consistent at it to be able to see the results you want. I think a lot of people are not consistent. They don't work diligently. Maybe they're not working on the right things. And then they wonder, why not me? Why am I not seeing what I want? I also think that mentorship is invaluable. Education from somewhere, whether it's books, podcasts, going to conferences, listening to the experts, or having a coach or a mentor that is like holding your hand and walking you through the fire. I think all of that is super important in terms of how you succeed in the industry.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, it has been such a pleasure having you on the Realtor Rant. And yeah, I just can't thank you enough. We hope to have you on again, and we can dive in a little bit more to where you're going next. But I don't know, Holly and I were thinking about joining your program and maybe even doing the 6-week boot camp. And yeah, it's just been an absolute pleasure. Holly, do you have anything else?
No, gosh, there's so much more I wanted to pick your brain, but yeah, we'll have to have you on. You know what we should do, guys? We should do this again, like same time next year, and let's see if my crystal ball was right.
Let's do it.
You have the compensation, or
Let's
if you
do it.
win.
I think we should do it and see how much more successful this podcast is in a year.
Yes.
Love it.
Be awesome. I'm so excited for you guys. Thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you so much. We're so happy to have had you. And yeah, we'll stay in touch.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Till next time. Bye.